I'm unsure who first coined the term gun dick, but I think that it describes the issue at hand quite well. If you don't know what gun dick is, it's essentially the muzzle end of your holster or your gun printing through your clothes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 3 main steps that you can take to mitigate this obnoxious below the belt printing. This problem breaks down into 3 main categories: concealment mechanics, gear selection, and clothing choice. First, I want to start by explaining how below the belt printing happens in the first place. So concealment works a lot like a teeter-totter. When one side of the gun is pressed tight to the body, the other side of the gun typically wants to move away from the body. When we are manipulating the gun to make it conceal, we can move it in 2 main ways. We can move it this way, and we can move it this way. We can also combine these 2 types of movement. For below the belt printing, we are mostly concerned with the way the muzzle moves in and out. So for the sake of this video topic, I'm just addressing this movement. The grip of the gun is usually the most challenging thing for people to conceal, and because of that, it can be useful to use the full teeter-totter to our advantage by rotating the grip into the body and by tipping the top of the slide into the body. However, by doing this, the muzzle sticks out and can print under tighter pants. This is below the belt printing. So this leads me into the first section for solving below the belt printing, and that is concealment mechanics. The first way we can start to solve this problem is by placing the gun on our body in a more neutral position. Generally, we want to avoid tipping the teeter-totter in the opposite direction with the muzzle angled into our body. Although it may eliminate below the belt printing, it will usually create a new concealment problem with the grip and rear sight and can increase the likelihood of muzzling our lower extremities. In addition to putting your gun in a more neutral position, you might want to reevaluate where your gun is placed in relation to your peaks, valleys, and even your bone structure. If you haven't watched our video on peaks and valleys or followed up by watching our poke and check video, I would encourage you to watch those next. If your gun is placed on a peak, then printing below or above the belt line will be a persistent issue. And note that the teeter-totter only works when there's a place for either side of the gun to go. If your gun is butting up against any part of your bone structure, for example, your pubic bone, not only will you experience pain, but printing in that area will persist. Next, we will talk about how holster profile plays a role in solving or creating below the belt printing. Here I have 2 different holster profiles with different design features. On one end of the spectrum, we have an ambidextrous holster with a built-in wedge on both sides, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have an ultra-low profile holster with no clip blocking or built-in wedge and a rounded muzzle. The built-in wedge is designed to increase comfort for all-day wear while also increasing grip and slide tuck. But as we discussed earlier, when we tuck one portion of the gun, the other tends to move away from the body. For this reason, you'll want to avoid holsters with built-in wedges if below the belt printing is a persistent issue for you. Although minor, you might also want to avoid holsters with clip blocking on the lower end of the holster, as these inorganic lines may show through your pants and cause visible printing. I'd also like to recommend against going too far in the low profile direction and discourage you from reaching for a holster that does not have hard material covering the muzzle of the gun. I understand how we might think the less material the better here, but in this instance, removing a section of the holster altogether can not only increase discomfort and make holstering safely more difficult, but it can also create an inorganic shape that will print through tight-fitting pants. If below the belt printing continues to be a problem even after working with placement, neutral positions, and a low profile holster, then you might have to start considering different clothing or fabric choices. Which leads me into the final section of this video, but before diving into this section, I want to note that most of the changes I'm going to mention from this point on will only get you that last 15% of the way there. In order for these to be effective, it's important that you address the issues we have covered thus far first. Obviously, wearing a looser fitting pant can be a potential solution here, but as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, fitted pants are a staple in a lot of our wardrobes. My goal with this video is to help you navigate possible solutions outside of selecting a loose fitting pant. Stretchy clothing materials like leggings or stretchy jeans often exaggerate below the belt printing because they tend to form around every curve and corner of the holster. To solve this problem, you can try to reach for pants with a higher percentage of cotton in them. Generally, the higher the cotton content, the less stretchy the garment will be, and the less likely it will be to conform to the shape of the holster. Another option could be wearing a fitted undergarment to help smooth out the lines created by the holster. But be careful not to use something too tight, as this could not only cause pain, but it can also direct the muzzle angle into the body like we discussed in part 1. So to recap, in order to tackle the dreaded below the belt printing, I would recommend that you first try adjusting your concealment mechanics by making sure that your gun is well placed and riding neutrally. Then consider adjusting your gear by adding a low profile holster. And finally, adjust your clothing by choosing structured fabrics that can disguise the shape of your holster. And that brings me to the end of this video. Don't forget to leave any of your comments or questions down below, and check out the resources mentioned in this video as well as down in the description box.